Hey, what is up, everybody? I am here to give you guys a video today, and I want to apologize because I didn't give this video yesterday. I wasn't going to be able to do it on Monday because I was way too tired. Yesterday, way too tired, so I couldn't do it. So I'm here to give it to you now. It's Stone Cold's podcast with his special guest, Paige. And this podcast is actually a really good podcast. I don't think it's as good as the other ones he's done on the WWE Network, but I think that's a pretty good podcast. Um, he starts right off with her background, her in-ring story, and we find out that Paige comes from a wrestling background. I already knew this anyways, but this is for the people that didn't know. We find out pretty much a whole family of wrestlers. Her grandmother, I think she said, was a referee. Um, her dad, um, her dad's name's Ricky something. I forget his name. Ricky Knight, and her mom's name's like Julia. I thought that was cool. She has a brother named Zach, who she said is currently on NXT right now. Um, and Paige has been wrestling pretty much her whole life. Um, she actually wrestled as a fetus because her mom was wrestling someone, and the person that she did like a gorilla press slam right onto her dad, and said she found out she was pregnant. I thought that was a pretty funny line, and it's actually true. And Paige used to be afraid of wrestling because she was afraid because her mother had gotten injured. Um, she had enough injury in her right eye, so she couldn't see. So Paige would have to cook for her, and she was afraid of wrestling because she was afraid it was going to happen to her, and she was afraid to be away all the time because it's her family was always away when she was younger, and but eventually she started training. She got in the ring. I think she said she was like 13, and she mixed it up with her brother, and they did pretty good together. And Paige says that she didn't really know how to sell very well when she was wrestling, because Stone Cold asked her about that. And Stone Cold. This was just a really good podcast. Um, and she says that they used to close. She used to have to close her eyes, and everybody would take hits at her. I thought that was a really funny line. And what else? She talked about like what she used to be like in the indie scene. She used to be a character called Brittany Knight, and she used to be in in a tag team called like the Blossom Girls or something. Nah, like that anti diva tag team group. I thought that was really cool. She talks about they talk about the documentary that she had, um and how Paige used to be, it was like two filming this documentary, and it was a perfect time to film it because she was coming on to a second tryout into WWE. Um, and they talk about like the match that she had with with her mother, and how she worked like a heel. She was like an old school heel, and she said that her family wasn't nice to her, like wasn't like protective of her. They really treated her hard. To get into the business, they would hit her around a lot. And it was really cool. She talks about how she would get like an accident or something, like she got hit by a car and she was like bleeding all over the place, and her dad was like, can you still move your toes?" And she's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Okay." And she used to have to take down the ring and set up the ring, um, all that stuff. And Paige talks about how she had a match with her mom, and her mom was the heel and she was the face, and it ended up being a pretty good match. She did a lot of dirty stuff, and that was really cool. You can check out more about that. And Stone Cold Steve Austin talks about some of his old days in the wrestling business. Um, and Paige talks about coming up to NXT, and she was really close to a lot of the divas didn't like her because she looked different than everybody else, and they were kind of scared of her. She even said that one of the divas, I think her name was like Sherry Guerrero, um, told her that, and she said that she used to be really stiff when she was wrestling because the WWE wrestling is different than the European style of wrestling, and she said that she like did like a shoulder tackle to Summer Rae and she got her right in the teeth and she really hurt Summer Rae, and she said that her and Summer Rae were have been friends since she came to the WWE. Um, she talks about how she actually, I forgot to mention, she used to bartend and be a bouncer before she came to WWE. She was 15 and she was doing that stuff. Now we think about it that it's crazy to them, but Paige lives in England. She was born and raised in England, and it makes sense. And it it's probably different rules there. And she used to talk about how she used to have to break up fights a lot and stuff like that. Um, Later on in the podcast, I'm just going to mention it now. She talks about the story about how she was her brother's overprotective. Like if there was a guy trying to flirt with her or something, her brother hit him in the head with a pool cue. They would like dump ice from the water. They would do a lot of crazy stuff um, to protect her, and now she looks after like her her family, her brothers, and she talks about. But let's back. So then she talks about NXT. First, she was in FCW, which was Florida Championship Wrestling. That was what NXT was, and then it turned into NXT. And she said she really didn't know how to cut a promo. Like she knew how to talk, but she didn't really understand. Like you had to sell your promos. So Dusty Rhodes always tried to help her out with that. Dusty Rhodes would tell her to be herself. I actually didn't even mention that she didn't get into the WWE the first time. When she did her first tryout, um, the WWE um, didn't take her because she wasn't being herself. So then she got a second one, um, and it was one. But and John Laurinaitis set it up, and the people wanted it were Jamie Noble and Goldust. And she said that this time she was being herself, and she actually had to get in the ring and wrestle her brother around. I thought that was pretty cool. And she talks about how her idols as a kid were Alundra Blaze, Lita. There was another wrestler I don't remember her name, and Stone Cold Steve Austin and Rikishi. And she talks about too how there used to be wrestlers that would come to her house all the time, like Jake the Snake Roberts, and she has this autograph like shoe, like part of his boot that she still has to this day. She talks about how the Bushwhackers, Yokozuna, um, and other people used to come to her house, and but yeah, Dusty Rhodes. She looked. Because Dusty Rhodes would tell her just to say one sentence promos, and it got to the point where she couldn't think of anything, so she went off on Dusty Rhodes. She called him a motherfucker, um, and she went into the locker room, and Dusty Rhodes would tell her that you just didn't have a good day today, but Dusty Rhodes would see something in her, and Dusty would tell her that no one ever tells calls me motherfucker and gets away with it. And Paige was 18 too when she got signed to WWE NXT, and Dusty Rhodes always looked at her like a princess, so I thought that was cool. And Stone Cold asked what advice Dusty has given you, and she said that Dusty gave her the advice to always save her money because she's gonna need it in the future. Um, and then eventually she talks about how the Divas Revolution and how Triple H really started it on NXT, which is so true. And she talks about too how Triple H has always been good to her in the wrestling business. And she talks about how Triple H you know gave her like that big NXT moment because she had just gotten hit by a car and had to get surgery, and her dog got gotten hit by a car. She bought something using her money in the bank, but it all got stolen because it got hacked. And she talks about she gave her that big moment when she was like the first ever NXT Women's Champion, and she got to wrestle Emma. She talks about how she liked wrestling Emma in matches because she grew up with like the same background, like she wrestled the 13. So she talks about how amazing talent Emma is, and she talks about how the Divas Revolutions really started on NXT, and she says it's going to start to continue. Um, she talks about some stuff on Tough Enough, how she is hard on these people because she's being honest, and this is going to help them improve. Like Sarah Lee and Patrick says that he has a big ego, and no one's gonna want to work with Patrick, and she doesn't get how Miz used his save on you know Amanda and got mad or eliminated. Then she talks about how Stone Cold gives her some advice because she talks about how she has like low self esteem. Sometimes she has confidence, but she doesn't understand why people want her autographs. She says because you probably influence some of these people's lives, and Paige talks about that. Says that tell that she's trying to be herself, and that makes other people be themselves. To get some out of the eating disorders, anxiety, all that stuff. And I think that's really cool right there. She talked about how The Rock gave her advice. How she said to stay calm, cool, and collected, and she said that helped her a lot. She talked about how she has other goals. She wants to be in the Hall of Fame. She wants to be the longest reigning Divas champion. She wants to hold the Divas championship again. Maybe turn the Divas championship back to the Women's championship, which would be awesome. And she talks about like other things she likes to do. She likes to take random trips when she's not wrestling because she wants to live her life to the fullest. And Stone Cold talks about that story when he would travel with William Regal. Um, and I think that was pretty cool. She talks about how she always bounced off injuries, where she always worked whether or not she was injured or not. She she always talks about John Cena's nose injury for a little bit. She talks about like how people have influenced her through wrestling players like Fit Finley, Dean Malenko, stuff like that. And um, trying to think what else she talks about. She also talks about too how like all those goals, and she talks about how Stone Cold Steve Austin was like a hero. And that's really it. That was kind of like the whole podcast. You can listen to it on the network if you want to, if I missed something. But this was a really good podcast, and I really enjoyed it. Um, and I really like it, Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast. He just asks the nice, tough questions, and they're really fun to listen to. You should totally check it out. That's pretty much it, guys. You can subscribe to my other channels, Owen the Talkinator, CM Brothers, James Hebert, and Weymouth Youth Wrestling, and you can click down below to subscribe to me, and I'll be back to give you another video at some point this week.